they grew the product, they trimmed off the product to their specifications to highlight the best parts of that plant to smoke to consume. So when it comes to that, that's how I see it. And the rest of that stuff that comes off the sides, the leaves, and even the trichome shake fall through kind of thing, that's great for concentrates and edibles. When you're looking at full bud should be consumed. It has a developed profile, a cured age to it. The terpene profiles develop within that bud to highlight that strain. So that's where you want to be. You can, however, I'm not going to knock on anybody. There's a subset of my life where I just wanted to smoke a giant freaking joint.
Yep.
And I would go buy shake ounces and smoke giant silly sized joints. Whatever you do, and this goes back to many conversations we've had, it comes down to your consumption style, but if you want to smoke the best of the best, you're smoking bud.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Twax Talk. I'm joined by my co-host, James, as always. How you doing, James?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing just dandy.
Good.
Today, we're going to be talking about shake, trim, flower. What does it all mean? What should you be smoking on? Does it really matter? The short answer is yes, it does. And you shouldn't be smoking shake or trim. That's my personal opinion. Jamie's might have a different one.
It does matter.
Yes, it does matter. And we're going to dive into what the differences are, if it really matters in the long run, or the short term, really, I guess, is what it comes down to. So why don't we just go ahead and get on into it? James, I would have to guess that you probably aren't a huge fan of shake and trim.
Shake and trim is great for making butter and edibles.
Yes.
That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
I think that's a great opinion to have. I think maybe we start, is there actually a difference between shake and trim? In my mind, there is.
Yeah, you know, we have terminologies now that we have to use, even in Colorado, for determining tax rate based on the material type, right? You say, like, there's a tax that's on finished bud, there's a tax that's on shake, there's a tax that's on shake and trim allocated for extraction. And in Colorado, shake and trim tend to fall in the same category. Now, what does that mean for small buds? What does that mean for XYZ? Popcorn, those things like that. The way I look at it is simply this. If it has structure around a central stem, if it is a bud, if you will, from the size of a, I don't know, say like a Skittle, to the size of a giant cola that you could beat someone over the head with. There's that would to me be bud. I would call that bud, and that's what I smoke. That's popcorn. You know, there's a bit of argument. I think a good discussion point on that. Yeah. What is popcorn? Popcorn. There's a lot of times popcorn is mixed with shake. Shake to me is the smaller inner leaves of the bud that weren't quite trimmed well or off the first round of trimming, and can dry with the bud as it's aging and then break off. So you have what looks like loose leaf or the oregano looking kind of that. And that to me is trim shake. That is a subpar material for smoking or full bud dry vaporizing. The buds, what you're doing in, I would say anything in cannabis, is honoring the work and the honor and integrity that grower put into their product. They took that product, they grew the product, they trimmed off the product to their specifications to highlight the best parts of that plant to smoke to consume. So when it comes to that, that's how I see it. And the rest of that stuff that comes off the sides, the leaves, and even the trichome shake fall through kind of thing, that's great for concentrates and edibles. When you're looking at full bud should be consumed. It has a developed profile, a cured age to it. The terpene profiles develop within that bud to highlight that strain. So that's where you want to be. You can, however, I'm not going to knock on anybody. There's a subset of my life where I just wanted to smoke a giant freaking joint.
Yep.
And I would go buy shake ounces and smoke giant, silly-sized joints. Whatever you do, and this goes back to many conversations we've had, it comes down to your consumption style, but if you want to smoke the best of the best, you're smoking bud.
Twax Talk is brought to you by Twax, by The Clear. If you don't know, Twax is infused pre-rolls utilizing full premium flower, never shake or trim, combined with the well-known flavors of oil provided by The Clear to create some incredible tasting pre-rolls like lime sorbet or banana cream or some of the classics like OG and lemon haze. If you live in a state with legal cannabis access, go to your dispensary and keep an eye out for Twax on the shelves. So I have a sort of similar view. My view on shake and trim was always that shake was basically what dispensaries do is they buy, like a pound of flower from a cultivator, right? And then they're going to break that pound up into ounce jars or a QP jar or something to put on their shelf for display, and then they're going to hand that out over time. And as they burn through that pound, there's the leftovers that start to compile on the bottom. And so you get the little pieces of bud that broke off when the bag is getting moved around, and the trichomes that are coming loose, and some of the leaves that are breaking off and collecting on the bottom. So to me, that has always been shake, where it's literally the stuff that has been shaken off of the buds through the process of taking them out of the bag, throwing them in a jar, distributing it to customers, etc. Whereas trim is literally, I went into the grow, I cut the leaves off the plant to prune them up so the flower, the buds themselves could absorb more light, more nutrients, grow bigger buds, right? That's why people prune their plants. And then you take that leaf, or after you harvest and you're doing your dry trimming or wet trimming or whatever, you're just taking those leaves and collecting that separately as its own thing. And that is trim. It's literally what you trimmed off of the bud before you sold it. So in my mind, shake, you're still going to get little pieces of bud in there, maybe some of the popcorn, that sort of thing. But
Sure, and a lot
if
of
you're
trichomes too.
if you're buying straight trim, in my opinion, it's mostly just going to be the leaves, which will still have some trichomes on them. But it's just not going to have the same effect as smoking flower. And it's also just not going to taste as good. It's not going to burn as good. You need a lot more of it too, just to get the same effect. Like a gram of trim or shake versus a gram of bud is going to look totally different just because of the quantity that you need to match. So I've always preferred whole bud just because that's where, in my opinion, the potency is. That's where most of like the cannabinoids are going to be focused. That's where the plant, when it's growing, all its energy is getting pushed into the flower and the bud itself. It's not getting pushed out into the leaves or the stem or anything.
That's why we prune. That's why we remove the other biomass in the grow process, is to let the plant focus on its energy and producing more sugary resin glands on their buds. I love where you're going with that. Honestly, that was a very insightful way of putting it, because I'm thinking back on many years in manufacturing and dispensaries, and I'm looking at two different bags labeled shake and trim. Trim looks very different than shake. Shake it is a lot drier too. The trim, a lot of trim nowadays, and for good reason, a lot of trim nowadays is cut off the plant fresh and then frozen. So then it can be used to wash down to make rosin or cured extract, or fresh live extracts, things like that.
Cheap distillate.
For the lower grade stuff that's been dry, that's kind of the looser leaves. Yeah, I wouldn't waste my time trying to make anything high end. But you get good trim. You work with good trim and good growers that trim their plants very well, trim down the bud very well. You take that trim, and that trim carries a large amount of value because of the amazing high price concentrate you can create out of it. Now it comes down to, is that viable a lot of the time? Sometimes not, in terms of yield and potency. Because trim, it's all variable by plant. It really is. And since we're trying like anything, and I think in all parts of the industry, stop buying on price and potency.
Yes.
I'm going to say this loudly and proudly. Stop buying on price and potency. And the way they do that is, well, you can either create a concentrate, which is still buying on potency, but it highlights the other aspects of the plant. And within that growing, that's why I buy price and potency. Trim potency varies massively.
Yes.
there's times when I will have purchased a large amount of trim and I started working with it, and it just doesn't work. It's just not a good producer for that. Meanwhile, it might be a fantastic smoke. And then there's a lot of interesting strains. Rosin makers on the call might know this. There are cakes and gelatos and things like that that just dump, and they have create amazing concentrates, and you really want that trim and shake. Trim. Whereas on shake, like you were saying, that's kind of up to how they not post process but post handle it in the dispensaries. There's so much, and the desire to use up, because you pay taxes on every gram of this stuff. The store paid taxes, you're paying taxes. It's all tax, so they got to use everything. They can't just take that shake at the end and go, oh, and just blow it off out of the back door. That would be absolutely
maybe they
absurd.
should.
Sometimes if it's real junk, they know. And these people who are purchasers should know the difference. We should be focusing on that. But at the same time, there's times when I have $20 in my pocket and I want a half ounce.
Yeah.
Because I got to roll a big silly joint to show off to you in the newsletter. So, by the way, I'm still working on that one. We'll talk about that later. But yes, so it's. However, if I'm gonna buy, especially a premium joint, let's put it this way: like if you're gonna go in and buy a premium pre-roll,
like Twax,
I really do encourage you to ask and make sure that is made with full bud. It takes a bit more work because you're removing a lot of the stems, and when you're getting that stuff to process and you got to remove those stems. And when you're breaking it down for a pre-rolled convenient joint, it's why you buy your flower and roll your own joints, because you can pull out your own stems and things.
Yeah.
You're letting someone else do that. You're paying for someone else to do that.
Yeah.
So they need to be taking the time. They need to be using high quality material. I would never, in my production, ever will use shake or trim in joints.
Yeah.
It's just not what I do. It's not what I would sell my own mother. And that's my ethos, is I would never make a product I wouldn't sell my own mother or consume myself. So that's why I like Twax, is because it is full bud. It surprises everybody. Every time I light one up, it goes in around a thing. They go, "Oh my gosh, this is great. This isn't dry and harsh and scrapey. You didn't just dump some distillate into a bag of trim and call it a day and roll it up." And no, this is a really high quality thing, and good manufacturers will do that. I believe that.
And on that point, like we say here, a big part of this podcast is about the education, and really, I hate to say it this way, but like, educate yourself on pre-rolls. Go to the dispensary, ask them, hey, let me get a pre-roll that is made with shake or trim, and let me get a pre-roll that is made with whole flower, like Twax. And try both of them, and I guarantee you will taste the difference. You will feel the difference. And the pre-roll with the whole flower, it doesn't matter if it's Twax or not. If it's made with whole flower, it's going to have a better taste. It's going to smoke smoother, and it's going to have a better end result. But what I want to ask you here towards the end is, I feel like it's never lumped into the shake trim category, but popcorn buds. I've always had the perception that popcorn buds was either similar to shake, just smaller buds that broke off towards the bottom of the bag, or it was actually the bottoms of the plant, where most of the light and everything's hitting the top, which is why you get those big fat colas. So a lot of that energy isn't going to those smaller buds. So the buds that are lower on the plant, they're getting less energy and all that. So they're producing smaller flower. It's still smokable flower. It's just smaller.
Yeah, you look at the you break out a cola, a standard cola. You got a big bud, slightly smaller, slightly smaller, slightly smaller, slightly smaller, all the way down. Now, popcorn, there's no universal standard for it yet. We're working on that. In fact, that's what ASTM does. Shameless plug for ASTM. Great voluntary standards organization made up of a worldwide group of experts.
What does ASTM stand for?
Oh gosh, I hope I'm not doing this wrong. Or American Standards of Technical Measurement, I believe, or something along those lines. And if I'm wrong, please beat me out there. But it is an organization I've been a part of for going on 8 years. I volunteer. I vote on every standard. We had to define what hemp hurd was. You have to define what standards for toxicology and vapes, ceramics, things around that nature. But for popcorn, I see them as anything small or anything bigger than a Skittle, basically, once it's dried.
Mhm.
So another thing that happens is when you're trimming it, you don't know if it's popcorn yet sometimes. You're trimming these buds down, they look great,
They're nice and
they
dense.
dry, and they cure and it just shrinks up into a little tiny pebble.
Yep.
And then you go, I'm not putting that in the jar unless I am, it's like, it's that to get that last 0.05 in, and that's what popcorn's great for, sometimes just to like fill that in. Because it's not bad bud. It really is smokable.
Yeah.
However, I prefer the nice, juicy, big top colas. However, in the small buds, less risk for rot, less risk for that because it's not so dense and tight in the middle, and it's a little bit more airable, a little more permeable. But it's consumer choice, and I leave it up to the best of the best here, and each personal, and also learn more and enjoy.
Yeah. All right. So we'll leave you with this. Like we said, Twax uses whole premium flower. I run social media for Twax and the Clear. I've been to the facility where we produce the flower for our Twax. Shoot us a message on Instagram, Facebook at The Clear Brands, and I will send you pictures of our flower. We can't post it right to Instagram because they'll take it down. But if you shoot us a DM, we'll figure out a way to show off what we got, and we'll prove to you that the flower that's going in our pre-rolls is unmatched in the market. And really the only way to find out is to try it for yourself. So go to a dispensary if you're in a legal state, ask if they carry Twax. If they don't, ask them why not. And that should wrap up this episode, right?
Absolutely. Good chatting with you.
Yeah. So thanks for tuning in to another episode of Twax Talk, and we will see you in the next one. Twax Talk is brought to you by The Clear Brands. Started in 2013 in Colorado, for over a decade, The Clear has been providing top shelf premium distillate vapes to a wide range of markets across the country. If you're looking for a vape that provides the best experience possible without cutting corners, you want to try the Clear Brands. Now, when it comes to distillate, none of it is created equally. You can find $5 distillate and you can find higher end distillate like the Clear. And the difference really comes down to how it's processed. And the reality is that cheaper distillate, they're not putting as much effort and time into processing it, and you're getting a less clean, pure product in the end that's not going to taste as good. It's going to burn more quickly. It's going to clog up more quickly. And in the end, you're going to end up just wasting money on a low-tier product. So if you're interested in a cartridge or an all-in-one that's going to last longer, taste better until the last drop, thanks to the premium hardware that the Clear provides, head over to your local dispensary in a legal recreational state and ask your bud tender if they carry vapes by the Clear.